Why I'm worn to a frazzle, well, there you have it. And when I can't find a decent cigar in a week, it makes me wonder, okay, something changing in my taste buds? Are the people making these things getting worse? I don't know. But anyway, you look forward to these things and they don't meet expectations, and so it tends to irritate. But I've got the ability to compartmentalize and shove all that stuff out of the way for the next 3 hours. It's Open Line Friday. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. That's the deal. 800-282-2882. If you want to call, if you want to send an email, lrushbo@eibnet.us. The story is, who were the Mueller report's hired guns? Special counsel Robert Mueller spent more than $732,000 on outside contractors, including private investigators and researchers, records show, but his office refuses to say who they were. Now, while it's not unusual for special government offices to outsource for services like computer support, Mueller also hired contractors to compile investigative reports and other information. So he's got his band of whatever it was, 13 or 16 We Hate Trump Hillary donor lawyers led by Andrew Weissman. And then they've hired a bunch of other foot soldier investigator types, and the budget for this, as best can be found, is just a little under $800,000. There have been numerous requests to the Office of Special Counsel for details on these expenditures and who was hired, and they're not saying. The arrangement has led congressional investigators and government watchdog groups and others to speculate that the private investigators and researchers who worked with Mueller and his merry band of Trump-hating pro-Hillary donor lawyers might have included not just Christopher Steele, but Glenn Simpson, Fusion GPS, the private research firm that hired Steele to produce the Russia collusion dossier for the Clinton campaign. They suspect the dossier creators may have been involved in Mueller's operation. This is congressional investigators, private investigators, suspect that the creators of the dossier, Fusion GPS and Steele, may have been involved in Mueller's operation and even had a hand in writing his final report. And the reason is the special counsel sent his team to London to meet with Steele within a few months of taking over the... So this guy, everybody's working off this dossier, which is a crock. Comey was citing it last night as though, hey, you know, Mueller hasn't footnoted the golden shower story. We had to track it down there, and nobody says it isn't true yet. Nobody says it isn't true yet. The whole thing has been blown to smithereens I don't know how many times, and we continue to find out that it remains the foundation for everything that was used in this investigation. Now, it's going to get a little deeper than this, and I'm still trying to figure out how I want to organizationally take it there, because it turns out, and I'm not trying to muddy the waters here, it turns out the FBI first made a deal with Steele to be an informant in February of 2016. The dossier wasn't created until that summer, 2016. The FBI claims that the investigation only began in July of 2016 when the Australian ambassador Alexander Downer just happened to be consuming adult beverages with George Papadopoulos, and George Papadopoulos told Alexander Downer that he knows, or knew, that the Russians have a bunch of dirt on Hillary. So Downer calls his buds in British intelligence and the FBI and says, hey, there's this Trump kid here, says that the Trump campaign knows the Russians have a bunch of dirt. That's when the FBI says it began. Yet they hired Steele in February. And we don't know why. We cannot find out why. Comey even alluded to the fact last night that it is perfectly fine to embed informants in political campaigns. Comey, for some reason, had a town hall Is Comey running for office? Why the hell did Comey get a town hall and see it? He got a full hour with a stacked deck. But he admitted in this town hall, the soundbite support for this coming up, he admitted or acknowledged it perfectly fine to embed informants in political campaign. Well, was there one in the Hillary campaign? We don't know. But there is now surfacing an allusion to the fact that there was an FBI informant in the Hillary campaign. I think a lot of people are doing a bunch of after-the-fact dancing. I think they're creating, oh, yeah, we had an informant in the Hillary campaign. We didn't target Trump. We didn't select them. Getting Comey out there. Oh, perfectly SOP, perfectly natural for the FBI to put informants in political campaign. When did this become perfectly natural and the order of the day? I think all of this gets boiled down to the fact that so many people now scared to death of whatever Barr is going to turn up in his investigation and the Inspector General. It's a bunch of people trying to reset the table so that Barr's not going to find anything that looked like it was exclusively targeted to Trump. Oh, yeah, we had spies in the Clinton campaign. Sure we did. Oh, that was a standard operating procedure. We've also got Comey finally turning on Rosenstein. Comey, when I listen to Comey, he was asked about Strzok, Smirk, and Page. Yeah, they really gave the FBI a bad name, Anderson. Oh, they just, their character just didn't have any. I just looked so bad. But the Bureau can recover, as though Comey hasn't done anything to damage the FBI. And he said Rosenstein just did not have the moral fortitude, did not have the character to be Deputy Attorney General. It was a shame. Well, remember, Rosenstein's a reason that Comey got fired. But anyway, back to this assertion here that it is likely that Robert Mueller hired Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS because we have learned the special counsel sent his team to London to meet with Steele after taking over the collusion investigation in the spring of 2017. Now, by this time, anybody and everybody knew that the dossier was unverified. It was uncorroborated. Comey had admitted this to Trump in January of 2017. He had admitted it in testimony before Congress. And everybody knew it. The FBI knew it when the State Department, John Solomon's story yesterday, the State Department knew that the Steele dossier had not a shred of truth in it. Mueller had to know. Mueller had to know when he took over the investigation. It had been underway for a while. He takes it over because he gets appointed. Comey hands him the file, and as I've told you, there's nothing in it because there was never any evidence. All they ever had was the Steele dossier. They used it at the FISA court. They used it to justify everything they've done. And now we find out that Mueller went to talk to Steele. Don't know if it was Mueller himself, but it says here, Paul Sperry says that Mueller sent his team to London. Well, his team would have been Weissman. His team would have been all the people who wanted the dossier to be useful. Whether it's a stack and pack of lies or not. So they sent a bunch of people over to Steele in London, no doubt, to find a way to make his dossier useful for their investigation. It remains the only thing they've ever had. And there's not a word of it that is true. So how do you feel about the fact that the special counsel, Mr. Integrity, Mr. Honorable, Mr. Boy Scout, when he is appointed, they told us that Robert Mueller is the only person that can really do this because he's the only one who doesn't have a care to Whitney outcome. He is Mr. Integrity. How many times have we heard that? And I maintain to you that if he was all that, he would have looked at the file on day one and would, as soon as he found out the Steele dossier was a bunch of crap, he would have shut it down. He would have been the adult in the room, and he would have told everybody it's time to stop this charade. You're damaging the country. You're damning the Constitution. But no, he was in on it. You know, folks, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you rip it apart and try to put it back together again, it all comes down to Mueller. Have you noticed how quiet Mueller is lately? Mueller had the opportunity to do something few Americans can do. Robert Mueller had the opportunity to change the course of history in America. He had this vaunted great reputation, Mr. Integrity, Mr. Honorable, Mr. Pick your adjective. He was the creme de la creme. He was uncorruptible. He could have stopped this whole thing the moment he realized that there was no there there. The minute he realized, the moment he learned, whether it was before he took the job as special counsel or after, the moment he learned that the only quote-unquote evidence that provided the foundation for this investigation was a pack of lies, unverifiable, uncorroborated, he could have saved his country from these last 2 years of division, speculation, innuendo, uncertainty. But no, he participated in it, and in the process, a bunch of innocent people's lives have been destroyed. They've lost their lifetime fortunes, whatever amount of money we're talking about. A bunch of people that really didn't do anything until this investigation revved up. He had the opportunity to prevent all of the disaster of the past 2 years. And I'm saying this because this is how he was presented to us. He was presented to us as a person who's apolitical. Yeah, he'd been a Republican, but he had served all Washington administrations, Democrat and Republican. He was above it all. He could have looked at this and in one day realized there was nothing to it. But he didn't. He decided to get in on this action and become a major player in the effort to reverse the results of the 2016 election. He continued on for 2 long years. He is still continuing. He has wrote an absolute disaster of a report which stands justice on its head, both constitutional justice and Department of Justice regulations. He produces this steaming pile of crap that is forever going to be known as the Mueller report. It has been reported by everybody, and it has been verified by Barr that Robert Mueller helped do the redactions. These redactions are the reason the Democrats are having a manufactured constitutional conniption fit. Robert Mueller can still say, he can still stand up. He can still present himself, and he can still point out that the arguments being made about the redactions are untrue because he participated in them. He helped the Attorney General. If you're going to hold the Attorney General in contempt, you better hold me in contempt. But he's not doing that. He's continuing to side with the people who obviously have one objective, and that's reversing the election results of 2016 and getting Donald Trump out of office. He's had the opportunity to save this country twice, Robert Mueller has. He has the unique opportunity to come out or leak a letter to the New York Times to say that he fully supports the redactions and feels strongly they should be left unseen and unreleased. The report says there's nothing and everybody needs to just move on. There's nothing in it that you don't know. He could do this. He could have done it yesterday, could have done it last week, could do it this day. But where is he? Where is the Boy Scout? Where is Dudley Do-Right when the country needs him? Nowhere. Radio silence.
Radio
This
silence.
is so low to
Shit,
allow
I'll
this
probably
to
get over here and they
continue
killed
when he
everybody
knows
already.
it's all bogus.
Fuck.
Knew it was bogus from the. So, for me, the next time they tell me that so-and-so is Mr. Integrity in Washington, D.C., to that. Because I'm not going to believe it.
You're listening to Rush Limbaugh.
The big voice on the right.
On the EIB Network.
Do you realize it may well be the Democrat primary race is over? In New Hampshire, Joe Biden is blowing out Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was up 30 points nationally. He was up 25 or 30 points in New Hampshire the last poll. And Biden has just launched over Bernie Sanders. This may not be bad, by the way. Don't misunderstand. I mean, for when I say us, meaning the Trumpster, it may not be a bad thing. A bunch of mad Bernie voters might end up voting for Trump before the end of the day. But nevertheless, and Trump is even tweeting. Trump's even tweeting. It looks like it's going to be Sleepy Joe over Crazy Bernie. Now, who would have thought you got 18, whatever it is, number of Democrats running, and all those women and all these new, fresh socialist leftists. And here comes the old brontosaurus from Jurassic Park, plugs Biden, wiping out the field. He's not just 30 points ahead of Crazy Bernie. He's 50 points ahead of the rest of them. Which, we'll break this down as the program unfolds. This tells us so much about the Democrat Party. But just before we leave this Paul Sperry story about the Mueller report, this is a foundation for other things I have coming up today. Just remember, it is now speculated by congressional investigators that Robert Mueller may have in fact hired Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS to help him investigate Trump for his report. And we've also learned that Fusion GPS has rehired Christopher Steele to continue anti-Trump work on behalf of a Washington-based nonprofit called the Democracy Integrity Project. That's run by a guy named Daniel Jones, who is a former staffer of Senator Dianne Feinstein. Christopher Steele still on the case, in other words. Now, again, despite everything we think we know, there's still some things that have surfaced that we don't know. And, again, the FBI is really insistent. And even Comey last night in his town hall on CNN, they are insistent. They are standing firm. They're holding firm on the idea that their investigation of Trump-Russia collusion began with Papadopoulos. Even though this has been exposed and nuked every which way from Sunday, they're standing by it. They are claiming this whole thing began when George Papadopoulos told the Australian ambassador, Alexander Downer, that the Russians had a bunch of dirt on Hillary Clinton and that the Trump campaign knew about it. This caused Downer. Downer, by the way, is in bed with the Clintons. He's a donor to the Clinton Foundation. He was a fundraiser for the Clinton Foundation. He has direct ties to the FBI. We all know that Papadopoulos didn't know anything about any of this until he was told by two other FBI operatives, Joseph Mifsud and Stefan Halper. So despite, you know what they're relying on? They're relying on the fact that what I just told you and what you know and what you've heard so many times, you're sick of it. People who watch CNN and read the New York Times do not yet know any of this. People that watch CNN, PMSNBC, or read the New York Times do not know the name Joseph Mifsud. They have maybe a peripheral knowledge of the name Stefan Halper, but they don't know. how the information was planted in Stephanopoulos, and then he was arranged to have drinks with Alexander Downer. All they know is that a Trump foreign policy guy met for drinks with an Australian ambassador at a London bar in July of 2016 and started bragging about the fact the Trump campaign knew that the Russians had some dirt on Hillary. Papadopoulos didn't even mention emails, and neither did Downer. That's been added to juice up the story, but emails were not even mentioned. It was just dirt. Well, we know for a fact that it didn't happen. The FBI, Comey last night on CNN in his town hall, wherever you look, they're holding fast to the idea that that's what caused everything. That's what caused them to go out and hire Christopher Steele. That's what caused them to start looking into this possible Trump-Russia collusion. But we know that's not true. We know that we have learned that the FBI made Steele an informant in February of 2016. He was given the list of admonitions. These are the things that you are not to do as an informant. If the FBI, let me give you a heads up, the FBI ever hires you to be an informant, they're going to give you a list of admonishments or admonitions, things that you cannot do. One of the things you can't do is admit that you're an informant, and you cannot tell anybody in the media that you are. Well, Steele did, and they fired him. But then Mueller went and talked to him, and now he's been rehired by Fusion GPS for this organization still trying to dig up dirt on Trump, run by the Feinstein former staffer. So the question is, why did the FBI hire Steele in February 2016 if nobody knew anything about anything until July 16 when Downer met Papadopoulos? What the hell? And now Comey is out. Well, of course the FBI, we quite normal, implant informants and so forth into political campaigns. There's nothing unusual about that. And now we got government officials attempting to say, oh, yeah, we had an informant in the Hillary campaign, too. Oh, you did? Oh, yes, of course we just didn't know anything about it, but yes, we did, of course. Back to the original question. Why make Steele a confidential informant in February 2016? Papadopoulos didn't meet Downer till July of 2016, and the only reason that matters is because that's when the FBI says, you know, we're just moving along, we're fine and dandy. We're investigating crime. We got our top 10 list. We're out there trying to find bad guys, put them in jail, looking for the next John Dillinger and Bugsy Malone and all. All of a sudden, we get this call from the Australian ambassador saying, Trump campaign guy bragging about the fact that the Russians have some dirt on Hillary. Whoa, we got to get in gear. Except they hired the guy who wrote the dossier that was a pack of lies that got him their FISA warrant to spy on Trump in February. This might have even been before Papadopoulos was hired by the Trump campaign. I don't know, but it's close. And then there are other reports. This woman, Ukrainian-American by the name of Chalupa, Democrat National Committee woman. I've seen reports that this woman spun up about Manafort in January of 2016. That's several weeks before Manafort even joined the Trump campaign. We got a Democrat National Committee woman by the name of Chalupa, all bothered and irritated about Paul Manafort in January of 2016, before Trump even hires him. Comey briefed Obama's National Security Council shortly after Carter Page joined the Trump campaign. That's a week before Manafort did it, late March. My point is, there's a whole bunch of stuff that went on long before July of 2016, long before Papadopoulos started having drinks and chatting with the Australian ambassador, that they are hiding. They are hiding. The real origins of this investigation are long before July 2016, and they are hiding it. And this is why Trump has to force the disclosure of all of these documents, FBI, Department of Justice, CIA, he's got to force this all to be disclosed, or we're never going to really know what happened here. Because it did not happen with Papadopoulos. That's the story that they've stuck with since they first made it up. Now, regarding there's news on Alexander Downer. Alexander Downer decided to come out of the woodwork. He did an interview in the UK with Sky News. He tried to defend himself against the charge that he was working with the FBI as a spy. Downer said that he provided the FBI with a memo he wrote after a May 10th meeting in which he says Papadopoulos mentioned Russia might release information about Hillary close to the election. May 2016. Downer claims he doesn't know why Papadopoulos told him that. May 2016 meeting with Papadopoulos? Well, it was July where the supposed drinks took place with the message from Papadopoulos about the Russians having dirt on Hillary. Downer also said in his interview with Sky News that there was no suggestion of collusion between Trump or Trump's campaign and the Russians. Well, if Downer is saying that he reported what Papadopoulos said to him, he reported it to the Brits and he reported it to the FBI, but he's also saying he told them that there was no suggestion of collusion between Trump or Trump's campaign in Russia. Well, if that's true, then why did the FBI start its counterintelligence investigation based on his nothing of a report? As Comey and others claim, this thing started in July after the Brits learned of Papadopoulos' meeting with Downer. But Downer says he told them, nothing to see here. I mean, don't think there's any campaign or Trump collusion with Russia going on here. But then, if you go further into the story, Downer, who was Australia's top diplomat in the UK at the time, provided a memo he wrote following the meeting with Papadopoulos to the FBI. 2 months later, he meets with Papadopoulos in May, doesn't tell anybody about it for 2 months. And if what Papadopoulos told Downer was so unsettling, why did he wait more than 2 months and tell the FBI about it? According to Downer, Papadopoulos mentioned that Russia might have information on Hillary Clinton that they could release before the 2016 election. Well, even if that were true, there'd be nothing illegal about it. Papadopoulos knew it. If that's true, Hillary would be in jail for the information she got from the Russian foreign agents via the Steele dossier. I mean, she took information from the Russians, too, that she paid for. Anyway, Downer disputed claims that he was part of a conspiracy to entrap Papadopoulos. See, these people are all coming out of the woods now, folks. They're all coming out of the woods to deny what has been reported. This is all happening because Barr said, I know there was spying on the Trump campaign. They're investigating it. The IG. So many people now are trying to rewrite their own versions of history in which they were involved. Downer says of Papadopoulos, I don't know why he told me this.
Right where I can't
the Russians had dirt on Hillary, but he did, and we reported it, and the rest is history.
Throttle. Well,
there's no defense for him saying it's some sort of weird conspiracy. I mean, it's what he told me. There's no conspiracy. I'm not making anything up. Yeah, he might have told you, but the question is who told him, Mr. Downer. And you know that it was Mifsud, and you know that it was Halper. You know that Papadopoulos did not know this on his own. The Trump campaign didn't know this. The Trump campaign had no knowledge of the Russians having dirt on Hillary because they didn't. To the extent that anybody knew, it was all made up. Downer told Sky News, quote, I would regard myself as a warrior for the Western Alliance, and that's why I passed on what Papadopoulos said. Now, while Downer was critical of Papadopoulos, he said there was no indication from his conversation with Papadopoulos in May that the Trump campaign had colluded with Russia to steal or release any Clinton information. Now, there was no suggestion from Papadopoulos, nor in the record of the meeting that we sent back to Canberra. There was no suggestion that there was collusion between. This is Downers talking to Sky News. No suggestion. No suggestion. The FBI is only saying your meeting with him triggered the counterintelligence investigation. Holy smoke! It's coming together now, I think, folks.
Pointing the way on the EIB network.
Open Line Friday, the EIB network. A little pop quiz here. What city in the world has more billionaires per capita? Per capita. And I'll give you a little hint. In this city that has more billionaires per capita, there is a billionaire for every 11,000 people in the population. What city is it? There's no prize if you get it right, because you could go Google it and look it up. Here's Denise in Seattle as we head back to the phones on Open Line Friday. Welcome, and great to have you here.
Good morning. Thank you. As you mentioned, I'm from Seattle, and I'm a Republican in Seattle. And I had a question for you. I'm hoping you could clarify a point that you made a couple days ago, where you mentioned that the Republicans were going to attempt to put a third choice out there for the 2020 elections, and thereby splitting the Republican vote and potentially putting a Democrat in office. I am extremely concerned about this thought, because if those Republicans could see what's happening in Seattle because of Democratic policies, I would beg them not to do this, because any Republican...
Sad to say, the Republicans are not blind. They know what Democrat policies do, and they know what liberal policies do. They can see it. Seattle's not the only place. You've got any number of cities that have been run for the longest time unchecked by liberalism or disasters. Dirty water, poisonous water, you name it, homelessness out the wazoo. That's not but the point is, these people hate Donald Trump. Doesn't matter. Hillary Clinton would be preferable to them to Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders, anybody. They hate Donald Trump. It's all and only about that. Now, there are two competing stratagems here. One of the stratagems was put forth by Thomas Friedman in the New York Times, and his idea to get rid of Trump is that because the Democrats can't do it without help, and the Republicans have to nominate somebody that's to the right of Trump. And he doesn't have to get on every state ballot. They would like him to be, but just get on some state ballots where Trump won closely, narrowly in 2016, and split the Republican vote. And Friedman's belief is that if you put somebody further to the right, since Friedman thinks that all conservatives are neo-Nazi, right-wing, gun-toting, no two-front-teeth hayseeds that drive pickup trucks, he thinks that if you put somebody that appeals to those people on the ballot against Trump, that they'll all vote for whoever's to the right of Trump, because conservatives are nuts. The other version of this is people who realize that Friedman doesn't know what he's talking about. Nominating somebody to the right of Trump is not going to split the Trump vote as much as nominating somebody to the left of him would. The never-Trumpers in the Republican Party, which, do I need to name names? Do you know who I'm talking about? The Mitt Romneys, the McCains. These people want a moderate Republican like them on the ballot. They believe that there's 7 to 10% of the Republican Party that hates Trump, and that if you give them a moderate, Washington establishment type Republican, they will break away from Trump and vote for that person, and thereby dilute Trump's support. So those are the two competing ideas. I don't know that anybody's trying to implement Friedman's, but the Republican never-Trumpers are thinking about implementing theirs. I don't know whether they'll be able to pull it off. I mean, they got to find somebody that can go through the rigors of getting on the ballot and entering the debates. I mean, you can't just say, I want to run for president, be on the ballot. There's certain things you have to do to gain your position on the ballot. One of them is including beating Trump. Now, these people would not be Republicans on the ballot. They'd be independents, because nobody but Trump is going to get the Republican nomination. So it'd have to be third-party option, but it would be a moderate Republican. Remember, the idea is to have the Democrats win. The bottom line for this strategy is the Democrats win the presidency in 2020. That's what these Republican never-Trumpers' objective is.
And that's very concerning.
No kidding.
That's beyond concerning. And I'm not even sure what to say on that point, because
I don't know that it's going to happen. It's not as easy as it sounds, and these people are not nearly as loved and popular as they think they are. I'm just telling you what some of the thinking is now. Remember, since 2016 election night, there have been people plotting how to get rid of Donald Trump. And many of the things we've seen tried, such as the FBI, the sting, the Russian collusion, the Mueller report, just telling you this is another one that people have in the hopper they're thinking about. The fact that it may not happen, you have to consider just a strategy, just a desire, just a dream, just a hope right now.
He didn't start it, but he'll be happy to finish it. Rush on the EIB network.
Quick time out here at the top, folks, but we'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. Hang on. Greetings and welcome back. Rush Limbaugh, the cutting edge of societal evolution on Friday.
And now, from sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Yes, sir, Bob. Here we are. Great to be with you. 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, you want to send an email, it's lrushbo@eibnet.us. Man, oh man, the Democrats are fit to be tied. Have you heard about what Rudy is doing? Rudy has announced he's going to go to Ukraine to investigate what happened between Biden and Biden's kid. And the Democrats, they're beside themselves with this. Giuliani is headed to Kiev to urge the incoming president there to pursue investigations that could help Trump politically by casting suspicions on the origins of the Mueller investigation and the Manafort case, as well as the involvement of Joe Biden's son in Ukraine. And so the Democrats, they are all over this. The drive-by media is all over this. They say it is proof of getting a foreign country to influence the election. They're saying, see, Trump did collude with Russia because now he's sending Rudy over to Ukraine. Here's Rudy last night on Fox News with Laura Ingraham, who said, why isn't the media interested in this? Why isn't the media pursuing this? Why not this? It's a fascinating story.
I guarantee you Joe Biden will not get to Election Day without this being investigated. Joe Biden was appointed the point man for Ukraine. 2 to 3 weeks later, his son, who had just been tossed out of the military for testing positive to cocaine, was appointed to a position on the most corrupt agency or the most corrupt business in Ukraine. Biden's kid took down about $3 to $4 million we can count. And Biden, when the kid got under investigation, actually says, quote, I strong-armed the president of the Ukraine to dismiss the prosecutor because the son of a, I'll leave it out, was corrupt. What he left out of the explanation was that prosecutor was right on the tail of his son looking for the money that appeared to have been laundered from Latvia to Croatia to America. All of a sudden, the president of the Ukraine gets a call from the vice president of the United States, and he's told you're not going to get your $1.2 billion loan guarantee, which they needed then to prevent default unless you dismiss the prosecutor.
Yeah, right. Okay, so now they're just all over it. New York Times, Rudy Giuliani plans Ukraine trip to push for inquiries that could help Trump. Rudolph W. Giuliani, President Trump's personal lawyer, is encouraging Ukraine to wade further into sensitive political issues in the United States, seeking to push the incoming government in Kiev to press ahead with investigations that he hopes will benefit Mr. Trump.
Shit.
Mr. Giuliani said that he plans to travel to Kiev, the Ukrainian capital, in the coming days, and wants to meet with the nation's president-elect to urge him to pursue inquiries that allies of the White House contend could yield new information about two matters of intense interest to Mr. Trump. Now, we have a tweet here from Pencilneck. Today, Giuliani admitted to seeking political help from a foreign power. Again. His defense? He says, we're not meddling in an election, we're meddling in an investigation. Somebody could say it's improper. And Pencilneck says, yeah, it is. It's immoral, it's unethical, it's unpatriotic, and now standard procedure. Here's Chairman Jerry Nadler. Jerry Nadler was on Capitol Hill today talking to reporters about Rudy traveling to Ukraine.
We've come to a very sorry state when it's considered okay for an American politician, never mind an attorney for the president, to go and seek foreign intervention in American politics.
To seek foreign intervention in American politics. So, Mr. Snerdley, what do you think's going on here? Do you think Rudy just tweaking him? I think he's not tweaking him. He's just, you guys, you spied on us. You mounted this entire 2.5 year thing to destroy us. Well, we're going to show you what it looks like. We're going to show you how it feels. We're not going to do it under closed doors, and we're going to lie to anybody about it. If there's dirt to be had on Biden and his kid, we're going to find it. Damn straight we are. Now, there's an interesting piece today at a website called DC Whispers, and I have cited their work before. And it's an interesting theory that I just want to run by you. The headline is Hook, Line, and Sinker. How President Trump just played Democrats and the media into giving him what he's wanted all along. And here is the lead. Congressman Jerry Nadler is not a particularly bright guy. By the way, may I make a brief observation? I've been watching these committee members on the Democrat committees here all week. And I've watched them all talking about Trump and what a rotten guy Trump is, what a reprobate Trump is, including Congressman Nadler. And it's clear that in most of these cases, if not all, not a single one of them could even come close to the life achievements and accomplishments of Donald Trump. Not a one of them. And in fact, many of them couldn't do any more than they've already done, which is run for office and get elected for life in the U.S. House of Representatives, where the incumbent re-election rate is 95%. You realize once you get elected to the House once, you can have that job the rest of your life until they term limit you or redraw the districts on you. But it's almost a guaranteed job, and they don't have to do anything. That's Biden. Joe Biden has done nothing except live and work in Washington and doing deals like he did in Ukraine and with the Chicoms to aid his other son are the way these people make it happen for their families.
Hey, can you hear me? Hi. I didn't
They
see you.
arrange
Okay.
sweetheart deals for their sons
doing?
and daughters who have no experience doing anything. It's how the
Wow,
world
nobody's there.
is spun at the highest levels of government. Got a high-ranking American official like Vice President Biden who has to go to China to do something on a trade deal, and part of the deal is that a Chinese company would invest in his son's startup. Son doesn't know what he's doing. No reason why anybody would give the son $1.5 billion, but there it happens. The Chicoms or any other foreign country look at this as a cheap investment in order to get a deal with America that they like. But these people in what we call the real economy, the real world, the private sector, they've never been there, and particularly on the Democrat side, and they couldn't function there. And I'm watching, particularly I watched Nadler. He barely knows how to run that committee. Some staffer, if you notice, some staffer's always putting a piece of paper in front of him to give him the parliamentary procedures and what to say when it's time for a vote, a voice vote, to call a roll. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just a partisan New York liberal doing the maximum he's capable of, which is all he knows how to do. And he's sitting there in judgment of Donald Trump. I know he's got the power to do so. He was elected. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm just saying the contrast here is striking between people whose careers have been in politics and people who have not been in politics at all. And that's Trump. So it starts out here, Jerry Nadler, not a particularly bright guy. Granted, when put up against some of the even more foolish members of the U.S. Congress, Nadler can appear somewhat competent. But there are increasing whispers throughout Washington that Jerry Nadler has just fallen for a Trump trap big time. President Trump knows the most pertinent parts of the Mueller report. President Trump has seen it all. So, too, do leading members of Congress, namely Republicans, because they've actually bothered to review it and go up and read it, unlike the Democrats, who have not. The full unredacted report has been available for review for some time now. Jerry Nadler could have looked at it at any time. By the way, the amount of the report, that it's basically 7 or 8 sentences in the obstruction section. It's like less than 1% of the whole thing has been redacted. There's nothing that anybody's going to learn above and beyond what is known. But the point is, no Democrat has gone to the secret room where they can read the whole thing. They can't take it out of there. They can take notes, but they can't take it out of there. Nadler, no Democrat's been up to read it, because it isn't about this. For Nadler and the Democrats, this is all theater. It's all show. It's all about keeping their base at bay. Their base is demanding Trump's scalp. Their base is demanding Trump's impeachment. Their base is demanding that the Democrats do something to get rid of Trump. And the Democrats know that they can't, not with the approval numbers at 46%. They can't. They know there's nothing in the Mueller report that warrants impeachment. So they've got to go through this rigmarole simply to keep their base at bay. And I'm not exaggerating. This is exactly what's going on. Now, it's not hard for them to do because the natural hatred they have for Trump has an easy outlet here. But this is not they're not going to go to impeachment, but they have to make their base think that they're trending towards it, or that they're trying to get there. So that's why the show is continuing. So it's not about the contents of the Mueller report. What's his face? Nadler, no Democrat has been up to read the only grand jury material redacted version. But Trump has. Jerry Nadler could have looked at it at any time. Instead, he's chosen to play a game of contempt against the Attorney General in the hopes that his media allies will be able to successfully spin the version that says the Trump White House is attempting to deny access to the full report, even though the report's actually available for review. As has already been said, Nadler could have walked across the hall, sat down, and read all of it. Guess what? A few Democrats have just now started to realize the trap that was set and Nadler's incompetence in shuffling his way into it. These few observant Democrats had their lights go on. The lights turn on moment when news of the Senate Intelligence Committee subpoena of Donald Trump Jr. regarding matters allegedly related to the now infamous Trump Tower meeting went public via an alleged leak by a Democrat member of that committee to the Axios news organization. Yep, they had, Readers might recall when, not so long ago, Democrats in the media were outraged over Trump's insistence that the events surrounding the Trump-Russia hoax and Spygate scandal be declassified so the American people could know of it themselves. They claimed it was a serious breach of national security. They claimed it would endanger members of the intelligence community. Now, those same Democrats and media are demanding the full, unredacted version of the Mueller report, even though Democrat leaders are all ready to go sit down and read it if they want to. So do you see what happened here? President Trump has manipulated the Democrats into now demanding what he wanted all along, full disclosure. The Democrats are demanding full disclosure of the Mueller report. Trump could turn around and say, hey, full disclosure, okay, here comes the declassification of everything that led to this whole investigation. This is the theory of the people at DC Whispers. We will see if that actually plays out. Let's take a break. We'll come back and continue with your phone calls on Open Line Friday. I have people asking me to explain in emails the tariff
Completely on a different side
situation with the Chi-Coms. And I've also had some people react to I did a little monologue yesterday after Trump's press conference explaining Trump's reordering
Where are they?
of the world order and America's position in it. And a lot of people have asked me to repeat parts of that again because they thought it was so profound. They thought it was so important. Thought it was so right on. They'd never heard anybody put it that way. Even had some people say, if you don't do that again, you're making a mistake because people will not be able to fully understand the Trump presidency until they understand what you said. So I'm thinking about doing highlights of that monologue as well and mixing all of this in with your phone calls in our remaining hour and 40 minutes of the EIB network today.
People everywhere want the American dream. So should gaining American citizenship be simple or hard? Rush Limbaugh nails the answer in his latest bonus report. Why becoming an American citizen should not be easy. Get it free with a new subscription to the Limbaugh Letter at rushlimbaugh.com. You're listening to the EIB Network.
Yeah, Rudy says we're not meddling in an election, we're meddling in an investigation, which we have a right to do. Okay, to the phones. Keith in Atlanta. You're next on Open Line Friday. Hi.
Hi, Rush. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
The reason that I wanted to call is that I've got an observation I haven't heard anybody else make, and that is the similarity between the first 2 years of Bill Clinton's presidency and the first 2 years of Trump's presidency, and why that's good news for Trump. And specifically, if you think back, and I started listening to you back then with the Clinton times, so this is burned into my memory. I remember the first 2 years of Bill Clinton that the Democratic leaders were asked about him, and the famous quote, I think it was the head of the DNC, told about how Clinton was an unusually talented liar. And when people were asked if they thought that he'd be reelected, they laughed. And that was the Democrats laughing. And he had come to office putting a lot of his cronies into positions that really, frankly, weren't qualified. He was doing favors for people that he had known from Arkansas and other places. And he was really seen as a bumpkin that was an outsider to Washington. And then it was somewhere around the middle of his first term, after the shutdown of the government, where he started showing some backbone and bringing in some skilled people to take on important positions, where it started turning around. And I see Trump replacing some of the early appointees that he had that, frankly, probably shouldn't have been there, with some people that I'm really impressed with, like Barr is one. And I see the tide changing here.
Well, it's an interesting thought process. I don't. You'd have to believe that history repeats itself, and that there's some sort of commonality here between Trump and Clinton, and the circumstance. I mean, it's almost 30 years ago. I don't know that the factors in Trump's reelection are going to in any way approach the factors that were there for Clinton. But look, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Keith in Atlanta, you're next. Great to have you, sir. Hello. Oh, sorry, Sacramento. I'm sorry, Robbie, my adopted hometown, Sacramento. Hi.
Hi, Rush Limbaugh. So a decade and a half ago, my mentor challenged me to go spend time with children and try to find out why they're so happy. So I did, and my findings were that children are so happy because they're so present. And they don't have a great concept of the past other than the last 5 minutes. Jimmy threw a toy at me and I'm crying, or of the future, except Christmas is coming again this year, or my birthday's in July. Today is today, now is the moment. And for that reason, I really wanted to keep people out of the present and to focus on the injustices of the past, to fear that the world is going to end in 12 years. And to me, it's a force of evil that wants to keep us human beings from being happy, from being present, from being childlike. So I just wanted to...
Nobody comes out of the womb hating anybody. They come out of the womb loving. They come out of the womb excited. You're absolutely right about babies and even young kids up until a certain age. But it's natural. I mean, I'm out of time here. I'll conclude my thought when we get back. I appreciate the call, Robbie. Thanks. Open Line Friday. El Rushbo executing assigned host duties flawlessly, 0 mistakes. Robbie from Sacramento was calling about an observation I made the other day about the fact that nobody lives in the present. Everybody's preoccupied with the past. Well, the left wants you to be. The left wants you to be thinking about how rotten things were in the past, how unfair, how racist, how discriminatory, how sexist, how the country's not great, nothing exceptional. And they want you worrying about, they tell you that the mistakes made back then with the country are so bad, so deeply entrenched that they can't be fixed. Therefore, we need to remake America. We need to get people in that are going to reorient it and get rid of the Second Amendment, this kind of thing. Then the future, they have you bamboozled there, too, because we're not going to make it another 12 years because of climate change. And so they've got everybody focused on the past and feeling guilty or regretful about it and afraid to death of the future, which makes enjoying life really hard to do because the present is where you are. We're all in the present. And if we're going to enjoy life, we have to enjoy the present. You can sit around and dream about the future. A lot of people do in terms of setting goals. But you're going to be totally wasting your time if you wring your hands over how bad and rotten and guilty we should be over the past. Particularly that part of the past where you weren't even alive. Big whoop. You learn it for history's sake, But living is in the present, and the left doesn't want you living in the present. Notice liberal ideology is constantly reminding you how guilty you are of the past, how bad the past was, and how dangerous and deadly the future is. And if they get you preoccupied in both those, then enjoying the present becomes problematic. And if you can't enjoy the present, then you're not going to enjoy life. Well, she was calling to say that somebody had made her study, a mentor of hers had made her study why kids are so happy. Not just babies, but why kids are so happy. And she came to the right conclusion. They don't have any baggage yet. Don't come out of the womb with any baggage. And the way most people raise their kids, they want them to have fun. They want them to enjoy things, get serious about studying at the right age, and keep them on the straight and narrow. But you can see there are some parents who get started educating their kids early on where they've come from in the past, and some of them scare the hell out of them when they're old enough about the future. But the natural state, her point was, the natural state of a human being before corruption is happiness. And it is. The natural state of any newborn is happiness. Any of you who have ever gotten out and gotten a puppy or have had a baby, you know this. They're simply, you look at them and you can't miss the fact that they simply seem to be excited over nothing more than being alive. And it doesn't take long to corrupt that. It doesn't take long before people start taking for granted being alive. As you want, or you can spend it
fuck? It's
pursuing
floating.
happiness or contentment.